Hi guys, in this video we are going to be discussing ancient Mesopotamia, one of the four river valley civilizations that we will be studying in this unit. Let's begin with our teaks and objectives for the lesson. We are going to be identifying the causes and effects of the development of river valley civilizations. We are focusing on Mesopotamia today. By the time that we are finished, you will be able to interpret the Code of Hammurabi by participating in a role play activity in class. The first thing I need you to do is to label your map. I have given you this map and I need you to label the four river valley civilizations that we are going to be studying in this unit. We can start with ancient Egypt, and I also need you to label the river that is most important to that civilization, and that will be the Nile. Next, I want you to label Mesopotamia and the two rivers that were important to the Mesopotamians, and that is the Tigris and the Euphrates. Next, you have the Indus Valley civilization, or you can call it ancient India, and the river you need to label is the Indus. And then lastly, you can go ahead and label ancient China, or the Shang civilization, and the Yellow River. Now let's start with our notes. Going with the grapes, we're going to start studying the geography of ancient Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means the land between two rivers. And as you saw in the earlier map, the two rivers that we're referring to is the Tigris and the Euphrates. This civilization is part of the Fertile Crescent, this area here in green. And it's called the Fertile Crescent because it's shaped like a crescent moon. This is located in modern-day Iraq. The two rivers that are most important to the civilization are the Tigris and the Euphrates. Both of these rivers serve as a source of irrigation for the crops and also resulted in permanent settlements near the river. Thanks to the availability of the fertile land near the river and also the fresh water, this led to an increased food supply, which, if you recall from our previous lesson, we call that a surplus. Now let's look at the Mesopotamian religion. Mesopotamians were polytheistic. That means that they believed in many gods. We believe there were as many as 2,000 different gods that Mesopotamians prayed to. These gods were very capricious. People believed that if the gods were unhappy, they would send bad things to happen to them, like their crops might not grow because of a drought or floods, or maybe they'd be attacked by enemies. So they spent a lot of time praying to the gods and sacrificing to the gods, trying to keep them happy. Mesopotamians worshipped in these buildings, like the one you see pictured here. These temples were called ziggurats, and that's where they had their religious ceremonies, worships, and sacrifices. Mesopotamians had built very large cities, so now we're looking at the achievements. These buildings were made from mud and bricks and crushed reeds, and they also protected their cities with these walls to protect them from invasions from outside. A group of Mesopotamians known as Sumerians invented the wheel and the sailboat. They also developed irrigation systems for their fields. They used bronze and copper tools, and they even created a 12-month calendar. Babylonians, another group of Mesopotamians, developed a number system based on 60. This number system is the basis for our seconds and minutes today. They also developed the earliest known writing system, and that is called cuneiform. This system of symbols was carved into clay tablets that were then hardened and created permanent records. Lastly, we'll talk about the Phoenicians. They were the best shipbuilders around, and they were really great sailors. They developed the first alphabet as well. So if the word phonic sounds familiar, that's because it comes from the Phoenicians. Our later alphabet system was derived from this early alphabet system. Now let's look at the Mesopotamian politics. The Mesopotamians were a theocracy, that is, a society that is governed by religious leaders and religious laws. The rulers of these societies were often priests. They also divided themselves up into city-states. For example, Uruk, Ur, and Babylon. Those were city-states within the Mesopotamian empires. Each city-state had its own ruler, its own gods, and its own military. But they did speak similar languages, and they also interacted with each other through trade. One of the earliest written law codes comes from Mesopotamia. This is the Code of Hammurabi. And this code covered most of the daily occurrences in Mesopotamians' lives. And we are going to study this more fully during our class simulation of the Code of Hammurabi. Now let's look at the Mesopotamian economy. In Mesopotamia, there were specialized jobs. People could become farmers, herders, or fishermen. They could also become masons and potters, or even merchants. Merchants traded food, clothing, jewelry, and wine with other groups that were nearby. They used barley and precious metals for barter. Lastly, we'll talk about the social structure. So, the social hierarchy in Mesopotamia included four hereditary social classes. That means that you were born into your social class and you couldn't really move up or down. You had to be born into a higher class. Women were not equal to men, and their jobs included raising children and crushing grain inside of their homes and doing other domestic chores. Wealthy women, however, enjoyed more freedoms and rights than the poor women. They were able to go to the marketplace alone, they could even run their own business, and they could obtain a divorce. Okay, that brings us to the end of the lecture. So what I want you to do after completing the activity on the Code of Hammurabi is to consider whether you think these laws were biased. That means, do you think they were prejudiced against certain groups of people? You can use two examples from the code to support your answer and create a thesis statement like we have been practicing. If you have any questions, bring them to class, and thanks for watching.